All right. I show 9 o'clock, so I've got a few announcements before we call the meeting to order. And as if this teleconference is discontinued at any time during the meeting will be stopped and reconvened once the audio connection is restored. And if it can't be restored, we'll try again at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And I'd ask that all participants except the trustees keep their phones on mute until they're recognized to speak. Trustees will be allowed to ask any questions, comments at any time during the meeting. So I will call the April teleconference meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation Authority to order. We need to take a roll call vote, but I would also say that any items that require action on our agenda has to be recorded by voice vote, and I will ask each member to respond with a yes or no in the order that we sit on the horseshoe, starting with James. So we'll take a roll call meeting. James?
Present.
Cooper?
Yes,
here.
Present.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay. David? I assume David is not there. Barney?
Present.
Myself. Laura?
Present.
Brent?
Present.
Steve? Okay, I assume Steve is not there. If David or Steve join the meeting after we get started, I'd ask them to please let us know. And then if any trustees need to leave during the meeting, I'd ask you that you let us know so the secretary can make note of that. All right. First item on it is our approval of minutes of our March 6th meeting. Any of the trustees have any corrections or additions? If not, James?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. Second.
I'll second.
Okay. And then a voice vote, James?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. Laura?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And I guess Steve is not there yet either. So, all right, our consent docket. There are 5 items on the consent docket. Are there any questions by any of the trustees that they'd like Jason to answer on the consent docket? If not, I would have a motion to approve the consent docket.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, James?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. Laura?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, our items for individual consideration. Item A is quite lengthy. I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, please, that the resolution ratifying the actions of the administrator in declaring an emergency and implementing an emergency purchasing policy in procurement of supplies, services, materials, or equipment in response to the COVID-19, and also the administrator to adjust service levels, schedule fares, and redirect human resources as necessary to respond to the COVID-19. So, Jason, if you'd like to make any comments on item A.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple of comments here. As you mentioned, basically this item declares a state of emergency for the transit system. 2 main things. One, as you mentioned, has to do with establishing an emergency procurement policy. And, the highlights of that, and it will be available online once we publish the meeting, is basically that we'll use informal bidding instead of competitive bidding if we get in a situation where we have to make an emergency procurement. Also acknowledging that we are going to be using open market purchasing, again, only if necessary. And then and then using any of the emergency purchasing policies that are applicable to the city and its trust, particularly if our current contracted vendors, for some reason, cannot, deliver services that we have them contracted to provide or deliver. So, really, just all in the interest of keeping the system running and making sure that we have the supplies and services that we need. And then, really, I think the bigger piece of that is allowing the administrator to adjust service levels, fares, and redirect human resources as necessary. And again, it's really the idea is to build in the continuity and resiliency of the system, despite the current operating conditions that we're in. And as the trustees know, and as we've put information out publicly, we are leveraging this state of emergency to make some adjustments to our service levels. And these service level adjustments are made primarily in the interest of protecting the public health and protecting our employees. And the way we're going to go about doing that is starting Sunday, we're going to adjust to a 12-hour service span here in Oklahoma City. So we'll be operating 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. 7 days a week. The majority of our routes are going to move from 30-minute frequency to 1-hour frequency, with the exception of the following. We will have routes 23, 2, 5, and 38 all maintain their existing frequency. We'll have routes 12, 13, and 14 on 45-minute frequency. And so what that allows us to do is basically work half of our operations and maintenance staff on any given day, thereby allowing the other half of our staff to be able to follow the mayor's proclamation and the governor's executive order to shelter in place. So again, the changes are being made with the interest of offering as much protection to the employees and the public as we can. A couple of other changes to the service that have been implemented under this declaration of emergency is we have limited access to the transit center. We allow 5 people in the transit center now. We keep the transit center open only to purchase bus passes and for restroom facilities. And then also, as you're aware, we have implemented required spacing on the buses to keep with the social distancing requirements. So we have certain seats that are basically marked as not usable in order to maintain that distancing. And again, for the trustees' information, just to give you a sense of how that's impacted our operations, we could get approximately 12 people now on a 40-foot bus, about 10 people on a 35-foot bus, and roughly 8 on a 30-foot bus. So that's just a summary again of the service changes that have kind of come along with this declaration of emergency. And I'm glad to answer any other questions the trustees might have.
Any questions? And I'm sorry I mentioned to mute our phones. I didn't think about muting our puppy dogs. So, all right. If there's no questions on item A, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All right. James?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. Laura?
Yes, and for the record, Steve Hill is here. He's the one who moved the motion.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm motion.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm good.
And Brent?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Greenwell is on the line also.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Good. Well, welcome, David.
My vote's yes, too.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, as I mentioned to begin with, I'm asking for the voice vote based on how we sit on the horseshoe, so I will move you all back in your position now. So, okay, item B is a contract for professional services agreement with Rousey Financial Services for April 3rd through December 31st. Jason?
Yeah, so as you know, our longtime financial services manager, Melissa Rousey, retired on March 27th. And we have not filled that position yet, although we have advertised for that position, conducted some interviews, and are actually currently in the process of re-advertising for that position. But, it's a pretty critical position for our department, our financial services manager. And like we've done in the past with some of our key division heads that have retired after, literally decades of experience with the department, we like to encourage them and try to secure basically a contract for consulting services so that we can better transition. We're able to keep that institutional knowledge and better transition, whoever that new person is in the position. And so, Melissa has agreed to continue to support us on a limited basis, primarily be there to answer some questions. And I think one of the pivotal roles she'll play is assisting in training the new person in that position with our NTD, our National Transit Database reporting. So with approval of this item, it will certainly strengthen our position in terms of transitioning to whoever our next financial services manager is. Estimated cost on the item, again, it's all going to be based on the hours that we end up needing from her. But we have an estimated cost here of right around $10,000, and the term would go out through the end of this calendar year, which should get us through our initial NTD reporting submission in October.
All right. If there's no questions, I would also ask whoever makes the motion and second would do it by name so the secretary can record it in the minutes correctly. So do I hear a motion to approve item B?
This is Brent Bryant. I make the motion.
Greenwell.
And David, did you second?
Yes, second.
Okay. All right. James?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. Laura?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Item C is an amendment number 1 to professional services agreement with DeWitt Investments, DBA Elite Protection Service for streetcar fare inspection and security services, estimated cost at $300,000. So, Jason, you might explain this. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, this amendment is really correcting an error we had in the initial contract approved by the board back in October. We competitively bid our security services. Elite Protection Services was awarded the contract. When we took the contract to the trust, we had an estimated amount or a not to exceed amount of $50,000 in that contract, and that was essentially an error on our part. We should have had the full estimated annual cost of about $300,000 in the contract. So since we're bumping up on exceeding that $50,000, we need to increase the amount. And just as a reminder, the $300,000 roughly that we pay annually for security services covers our security at the transit center. When we use contracted security, it covers the fare inspection officers on the streetcar, and then it also covers some security at the streetcar storage and maintenance facility. So this agreement or this contract is essentially for all of our security services for all modes, with the exception of the supplemental security that's provided by off-duty Oklahoma City police officers.
Okay. Any questions? How does that tie into item D?
Yeah, so item D, they're really not connected other than item D gives us really even more flexibility in terms of securing security services. And so if I can speak about item D next, would you like me to go ahead and speak about item D?
Yeah, I think,
now?
and then we'll vote on them separately.
All right. So item D is really a pricing agreement between the trust and another security company here locally, Superior Security, that has a contract with the Utilities Trust. And really our motivation for going out and getting this separate contract is really to provide, it really gives us the ability to provide supplemental security service if for some reason Elite, our primary security provider, is coming up, shorthanded in terms of staffing. And quite frankly, the only reason this item is on the agenda is because of the current state of emergency. We wanted to make sure that if for some reason our primary security service provider didn't have the personnel, that we had another provider to draw from. So with approval of this pricing agreement, it gives us the ability to also use Superior Security to supplement Elite if for some reason, Elite doesn't have the staffing. The main difference here is that this pricing agreement has a cost of not to exceed $50,000. So again, it would just be used as supplemental.
All right, thank you. All right, any questions on either of those items? If not, I would have a motion to approve item C.
This is Laura. I move to approve item C.
Second?
This is Barney. I'll second that.
All right, and a vote, James?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. Laura?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
All right. Any questions of any of the trustees on item D? If not, I would have a motion to approve item D.
This is Barney. I'll move approval of item D.
Second?
This is Steve. I'll second it.
All right. All in favor? James?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. Laura?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We've got three more items. Item E is amendment number 1 to contract for engineering services with HNTB Corporation for Phase 2 of the Northwest Bus Rapid Transit, an increase of $1,433,000. So this is one of the more important items we had on the agenda to have a meeting this month. So, Jason?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, before I get into the explanation here, just a reminder that it's been 15 minutes, so I believe we need to do another roll call just to verify who all's still on the line. I know we just took a vote, but
All
I
right,
believe
James?
that's the procedure we need to do.
James?
James
David?
Cooper reporting.
Present.
Barney?
Here.
Chairman here. Laura?
Here.
Brent?
Here.
And Steve?
Here.
All right, thank you. All right, you can go on with item E now.
Okay, thank you. Right, so this is Amendment 1 to our engineering contract with HNTB for the Bus Rapid Transit Corridor along Classen and Northwest Expressway. This amendment is for just over $1.4 million, so it's a significant amendment to say the least. However, with this amendment, this will take essentially our A&E services that are associated with the project, all the way through final design. And you can see in your memo there some of the tasks that are going to be laid out with this amendment. But as you'll recall, we've completed the environmental. We've done some conceptual planning through task 1A. And now with approval of this contract, we'll start doing the work for the preliminary design report. We'll get to 30% plans, the 60%, working our way up to basically 100% plans. H&TB is going to assist with the documents to bid the project. They're going to assist with an operating plan for the BRT. The amendment also includes some consultation on bus procurement, and then, of course, assisting us with facilitating some public meetings. So, again, it's a significant amendment, but it's also a very significant milestone in moving the project forward. So, two other quick comments, and you can see this on your memo, but the total contract amount with Task 1A that's been completed, and then this amendment is going to put the contract right around $1.8 million, and that equates to right around 10% of the project, less the bus procurement side of that. So, I think generally, we look at 8 to 10% for A&E as part of these projects. So we're a little bit at the high end of that, but I think, well within the parameters of what we would expect. And then just a quick comment on the funding source. We will use, for this particular amendment, we will use about $700,000 of federal planning funds, and then the remaining, the local share, will come primarily from our reserves, and then we also have the opportunity to use some unlisted GO bond funds for the local share. So anyway, with that, I'm glad to answer any questions. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing that I know is probably of interest to the trust is just the timing on this. Basically, with the approval of this amendment and then giving HNTB notice to proceed, they will work on the tasks that I described all the way really through just about the end of 2021 is when we'll get to final design, at least that last quarter there of 2021. And then we'll begin construction, possibly based on the timeline we have now, right around the end of 2021, first of 2022.
All right. And I wasn't looking at my pack. What was our projected overall cost for the project?
The overall project is $28 million. I think it's $28.8 million, somewhere in there. And that's the construction and the bus procurement.
And what was the federal share of that?
The federal share was, I believe, it's basically right around half. I think it might have been 48% of the overall project.
Okay. Any other questions by any of the trustees? Then I'd have a motion to approve item E.
This is Councilperson Cooper. Move approval.
Second.
Greenwell, second.
All right. All in favor? James?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. Laura?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Item F is a change order number 3 to the Convention Center parking garage, an estimated increase of a little over $31,000. Jason?
Yeah, this change order here really is comprised of three pieces. The first item we had to address through this change order was adding CMU walls for the elevator machine room. So those are basically like cinder block style walls for that room. That was an add of just over $14,000. We also had to change the location of the fire department connection to the facility along with the fire hydrant, install a new water meter. That piece of the change group is just over $16,000, and then there was just under $900 allocated to reworking some of the counter space in the offices that we're constructing in the garage. So overall, as you mentioned, the total change order is $31,696.95. It is our third change order on the project, but if you add all the change orders to date, we're just under $350,000 over the contract. So it's an overall increase so far with the three change orders of 1.4%, which at least at this point is definitely manageable. I mean, I think that's usually that's a pretty good number in my mind for three change orders. So hopefully we'll be able to continue that on throughout the project. And I am pleased to report, and I know that I've provided the trustees with this information prior, but we're continuing to work on the garage and haven't really had any delays to this point due to the state of emergency that we're in.
All right, thank you. Any questions? If not, I'd have a motion to approve item F.
This is Barney. I move approval of item F.
This is
Second.
Brent. This is Brent. I second.
All right, and all in favor, James,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barney,
Yes.
Chairman, yes, Laura,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
and Steve.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Our last item on the individual consideration is authorizing administrator to negotiate and purchase a parcel of land, and you might explain what that is, just so we know.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll try to explain without getting into too many details that might compromise our ability to negotiate. But really, this item we're bringing to the board in anticipation of our MAPS 4 program of projects. As you might recall, as part of the $87 million allocated to transit, a small portion of that was allocated to being able to acquire property to expand our facility. And so really what we're asking the trust to do is authorize the administrator to be able to identify and negotiate for a piece of property in anticipation of, eventually MAPS 4 being able to, support part or all of that purchase. So again, without getting into too many details about the property itself, what I did want to mention is, having talked with the chairman of the Transportation Committee, Trustee Sipner, depending on how this progresses, we would plan to, further vet what our plans are for expansion in probably a upcoming joint Transportation and Finance Committee meeting. And then the other item I wanted to mention is that in no way, shape, or form does approval of this item allow, the administrator or a designee to actually purchase property. It's really just the ability to bring a purchase agreement to the trust to consider, and that purchase agreement, would have, all the details in it that would inform the trustees so they can make a decision. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Well, no, I mean, with that not being able to get any details, then I would have a motion to approve item G for you to negotiate.
So I would move the item. This is Laura.
Okay, and second?
This is Steve. I'll second.
Greenwell, second.
All right, all in favor, James,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barney,
Yes.
Chairman, yes, Laura,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
and Steve.
Yes.
All right, thank you. A couple more items is ratification of our claims and payroll for the period of March 3rd through March 31st. Unless any of the trustees have any questions, then I would have a motion to ratify.
This is Laura. I move approval.
Second?
This is Barney. I second.
All right, all in favor, James,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barney,
Yes.
Chairman, yes, Laura,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
and Steve.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, our financial reports, and Jason was going to make this pretty brief, and because it's hard to have everybody looking at financial statements and looking, but if you just give us a few comments, Jason.
Just a couple of comments, and then, Mr. Chairman, after I conclude my comments, it will be time for another roll call.
All right.
Another 15 minutes has went by. So just two quick comments, and I've shared this with the trustees before, but it's a significant source of revenue. So I just want to remind the group again that looking at our transit operations in particular, our federal grant revenue shows to be through February about $2.5 million less than what we had projected. And we did receive over $3 million worth of reimbursements in March. In fact, most of that came in just right after the start of the month. Otherwise, it would have been reflected in this February financial. And then the other item I wanted to share with the trustees too, and I know I've mentioned this here in the last week, but with the CARES Act that is now signed into law, there's about $25 billion going to transit across the country. And although we're still working out the details of how that will affect us locally, it goes without saying we are incurring some additional expenses to respond to our state of emergency. But all indications at this point look like we're definitely going to be able to seek federal reimbursement for some of those expenses associated with our response. So I'll be sure to, of course, keep the trustees informed as we move through that. But if there were any thoughts about, additional pressures, particularly on the expenditure budget on the transit side, I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to recover a lot of that, if not all, through the federal funds that are on the way.
And also, Jason, you might make a brief mention that I guess the city finance is trying to analyze our parking garage situation.
Right. So what we did is, as staff, we started looking at our our parking revenues, trying to determine, really at this point, virtually no transient revenue and no event revenue coming into the system. How is that going to impact not only our expenditure budget, but definitely our ability to fund debt service? And we're in a fortunate position where we do have significant operating reserves to get us through in the short term. But as you pointed out, we're working on our own internal analysis, and then also going to be working with the city's finance department and just making sure that we know exactly where we are in terms of our ability to satisfy that debt service, pay for the expenses for the garages, and be able to move forward with conducting business. But looking at the financials here today through February, there's virtually you just can't see any impact at all to the current state of emergency that we're in. But when we start looking at our March financials, and particularly our April financials, that's when things are going to dramatically change. But we as staff will be, like I said, we feel like we'll be well ahead of that. We're already trying to look at how that's impacting our parking system, and definitely appreciate the finance department's assistance with that.
All right, thank you. Any questions by any of the trustees on any of the financial items? Then I'd have a motion to receive our financial reports.
This is Brent Bryant. I make the motion.
This
Second.
is Laura. I second.
All in favor? James?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Chairman? Yes. Laura?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And Steve? Steve? Okay. All right, we don't have any program reports.
Chairman, this is Steve. I've dropped offline for a second. Yes on that last vote.
Oh, okay. All right. We don't have any program reports. Items from the trustees, before I ask for that, I would just say that we all say our prayers for our country and our state and our city and all our family and friends, and every one of you all take care of yourselves. And maybe by our May meeting, we'll be back to somewhat normal and can get to see each other again. So any comments, James?
Yeah, I just want to a sincere thank you to Jason and all the Embark staff for kind of navigating this moment. Just very proud of Embark, and I just remain honored to serve with my fellow trustees. So.
All right, thank you. David?
No, thank you.
All right, Barney?
Yeah, no remarks. Thank you.
All right, Laura?
No remarks.
And Brent?
Yes, I don't have anything.
All right, Steve? All right.
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
All right. Well, as I say, these are difficult times, and this is a first for us on a teleconference meeting, and I guess we got through it and got everything done. And I would tell, I've got everything signed, so the staff can pick up all the signed contracts today. So if there's nothing else, everybody please take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next month. Meeting adjourned.
Chairman,
Yes. Yes.
if I may, I just want to make an announcement to Dave Ross, legal representative for COTPA. There were no citizens signed up to be heard, so that's why we did not have a citizens to be heard, just on the record.
Well, I had that on my initial script, but they said there weren't any, so I didn't bring that up. So,
Not a problem at all.
Thank you.
And one thing really quick, my name is Robert Ruiz, and I'm a new trustee that'll be joining the board. So I just wanted to introduce myself really quickly.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. I did not know you were on the line, and
No, that's okay.
And welcome to it. I have always said there's a lot of trust. The city has a lot of trust, but I've been associated with COTPA for many years, and I think it's as hardworking and dedicated and sincere, citizens that want to help the city that we have. So we look forward to having you on the trust.
Wonderful. I look forward to it as well.
All right. Thank you. All right. Meeting adjourned.